So welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding. I wanted to answer another question that was put in the comments down below, and this is a common debate item. One guy, James Nelia, if I'm pronouncing the name right, so sorry if I'm not. What are my thoughts on leg press versus squatting? And Tom Burke said down below, who's a fellow natural guy, I know down in the States there. So hey Tom, he says that squats are like playing Russian roulette with injuries. Here's the thing, anytime you push the body, you're playing Russian roulette with injuries. Anytime. There are some times that the risk is increased and sometimes that it's reduced. And Tom is right that squats do hold a little bit more of a risk for injury. 100%, just because the lower back is involved so much. And when the lower back is involved, there are a lot more, joints to worry about. You got to worry about the core. You got to make sure that's all firing properly. And it is easy to herniate a disc or to do something wrong if you're not trained well in it. If you haven't had experience, and even if you have, and you've just pushed yourself too far at the wrong time or done something stupid like I have. Like one time I went into the boards in hockey and I hyperextended my back, and then I decided, oh, the next day I'm going to squat 405 for sets of 25. Let's do that today. And of course I tweaked my back. So you got to be in touch with the body. Honestly, Tom is right there. Squats are more dangerous than leg press. 100%. But I will say in most cases, squats are more effective for leg growth, especially if you're a hip squatter like I am. Like you keep the weight around the hips, okay? And that's the way actually the legs are really meant to fire. Nobody walks around just with their knees, bending and contracting. They actually use the hips, right? The hips are a stronger joint in the body. And there was just a research study that was published in actually one of the magazines. I just read it just a little while ago. And it was published in, I think it was in PubMed or something. And it talked about when a person trained their glutes and activated their glutes regularly, that it actually helped reduce sports injuries to the knee. Now, why is that? Well, because if you are activating a stronger muscle group around a stronger joint, it only makes sense that you will naturally, under a certain unstable situation, go to that joint instead of the weaker joint that might be compromised. So for instance, instead of jumping off your knee, you use more the bum and more the hip, so you're not putting so much strain on a weaker joint. So the whole point of weight training is to find that perfect groove and to put the weight above the areas that have the most amount of integrity and strength to deal with the stress you're giving to them. Okay, so that's why a lot of guys in squatting, heavyweight and powerlifting, they don't just put the weight above the hips because the hips are better able to move more weight. It's also because it's safer. Okay, it's also safer. That's why they wrap the knees, because the knees are a weaker joint. They're not wrapping the hips. You know what I'm saying? Like it's different. I mean, although they do use squat suits under certain conditions to increase the weight, but the fact is the knee joint is a weaker joint than the hip. That said, Tom said he's been able to establish muscle mass from leg presses. Well, anytime you push the muscle, you're going to be able to get muscle mass. But on the leg press, because you're not extending the hip, right? You're just bending the knees, but you're not extending the hip. When you squat, you come up and you extend the hip, okay? Because there's no movement around the hip, you're going to not be hitting as many muscles as you would during the squat. It's a risk versus reward sort of scenario, right? But in my experience, when I've just stuck to just leg presses for a month or two, and no one-legged squats, no squats, none of the stability type movement, I actually lost size on my legs. And that doesn't matter if I went deep on the leg press or shallow or whatever. I mean, it's just because the leg press hits the quads primarily, and it hits some muscles in the hamstrings, but there's obviously no stabilization going on, and there's no hip extension going on. And those two factors do contribute to a lot of muscles being activated in the legs. So I hope this answers your question a little bit. And like I said to Tom as well in the comments, if it works for you, then stick with it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just have found in most cases, not all, but most cases, that squat is more effective. Now, if you have an injury, that's the beautiful thing about this age we live in now. If you have an injury, there's probably a machine that will allow you to still get a workout in and not hit that weak point. Okay, so say you have a herniated disc in your lower back. Well, leg training is pretty much over for you for squats for a period of time until there's some sort of healing that happens. But leg presses may allow you to continue your leg workouts, and that's the beauty of it. So do whatever works. That's my first priority is do whatever works. And secondarily, then, if you want to be experimental in your training and try new things, I'd say squats are definitely worth a try if you haven't used them. All right, well, thanks a lot for watching, and thanks for sharing my stuff. Take care for now.